Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2024 Board Candidate Forum. We have 4 board candidates here today with us. I'll have them just all come up on stage if they're ready. Welcome. We've got Liz, Steve Feldman. Plote, where are you? Right here. Oh, there you are. Come on up. And Matt's in the back getting a microphone. So you don't have your microphone on?
Hard what?
All right. I'm just going to sit and make this a little bit more informal because that's what we did last year, and it seemed to go pretty well. Right, we have 2 people getting their microphones in the back. So just as a quick announcement, at 3:30 is when voting will open up. You should receive an email reminder, and to access voting, you would go to your NANOG profile login, and the link will be up at the top. So I highly encourage everyone to vote because it's an important year. It's always an important year. Most importantly. The only person I see here who can't vote is Tigger. Sorry, Tigger. Ooh.
Who's?
Tigger becomes the first anthropomorphized stuffy to vote.
I'll be fielding questions from remote.
You will be fielding questions from remote.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So this should be a nice, easy session here. Welcome to the stage, Matt. Once we get everybody up on, actually, you know what? We could probably start. What we'll do is we'll have a quick introduction for each of you, about a minute and a half for each of you. Talk about yourself, why you're running, all the important stuff that they need to hear, and we'll just walk down the line. I guess Plote's going to grab a microphone, and Liz, why don't you get us kicked off?
Great, thank you. So I am Liz Cully. I got my first CCNA in 1999, and I think the dinosaurs were almost running the earth then. But so since then, I started at Comcast in 2006. I just celebrated my 18-year anniversary there, and I spent the first 9 years in operations doing entirely break-fix work on the network. And the last 9 years, I have been over on the engineering side, and right now I'm peering coordinator for Comcast.
Oh.
And just to mention, in parallel with all of that, I've put a lot of energy and effort and time and resources into other volunteer organizations. And it really started off as just get out of my normal work routine, but it has kind of evolved into where I take a very close look at all the volunteer organizations that I work for and volunteer for, and this is always in comparison to what's NANOG doing or not doing that these guys are doing, what's making these guys successful, and how can I bring this to NANOG?
Great, thank you. Mr. Feldman.
All right, I apologize for reading this, but otherwise I'll leave important things out. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this year's Candidate Forum. As most of you know, I've been involved in some way with NANOG since our beginning. Recently, I have served 2 terms on the program committee, mostly in leadership positions, and now I'm finishing a term on the board. My recent work includes helping the Hackathon Committee produce challenges for the last few events, and advising the new Moderation Committee as they drafted their charter and started their work to make Discord into a production service. Some of my top goals for NANOG during a second term include returning the organization to net positive earnings so we can start rebuilding our reserves and improving programs again, increasing opportunities to bring in new people and grow our community, and maintaining our relevance as an educational nonprofit while our industry continues to evolve. None of these are particularly new and novel, but it's needed to keep an organization like ours thriving. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt.
I'm Matt Peterson. Please read my candidate statement online. I have a background in kind of the continuum of networking, software vendor, retail, wholesale access network, consultant, peering, IXP operator, a tiny bit of standards development. I believe that I'm one of the only candidates that have presented a workshop, presented solo, moderated multiple panels, ran a BOF, and supported the event IP network. And these engagements have given me a really unique perspective of NANOG, both inside and out. I also think that the support statements that I've received are not from the usual incumbents, but instead represent a very diverse group of our membership. That includes a cybersecurity manager, a fixed wireless service provider, a data center vice president, a rural power fiber electric co-op, a global DNS operator, a rural IXP operator, and many others. And so I believe this demonstrates my relationship building in many layers of our industry, and I bring that knowledge and passion to NANOG.
All right. Thank you. Steve, at the end.
Are we live? Yes, we're live. Good. Hi, I'm Steve Plote. I'm currently program chair for this last 4 years. I've been involved with NANOG since 2013. 2 stints as program one as program chair, and of course, and one as vice chair. It's been an exciting ride for me. I love NANOG, which is why I'm here. I was going to take a year off and come back, but I was asked to basically come and try to be on the board. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. It's just one of those things, right? I'm heavily involved in finance, heavily involved in leadership, have roles in multiple organizations in that. If you look at my my candidacy, it mentions those. I'm heavily involved with my church, running issues on budgets, deficit budgets, et cetera, how to get ourselves back to break even. That's one of my driving things here with NANOG, is trying to get us from where we are right now, where we're essentially burning through our reserves slowly, but still burning through our reserves, to get to a cash flow positive statement in order to get those reserves back up. I think we know what to do. It's just a matter of execution and trying to get there. And part of that requirement is leadership, financial acuity, and just understanding what needs to be done for the community to make things happen that you all want to see. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So on behalf of the 2024 Elections Committee, welcome. We have a number of questions that we've talked about here online between us that we have for you, which you have not seen yet. So I'll be reading these in no particular order, and I have a sort of randomized the order in which I'll ask you to respond to them. So that way, keep it fair, keep it fresh, keep everybody on their toes. So we'll start off with the most obvious question here, I think, and we'll start with you since you have the handheld. Steve Plote, why are you standing as a candidate for NANOG's board?
Again, so as I mentioned, I was hoping to take a year off and then come back, but I was asked to be on the board, and this is a very critical time for the board. So I think me being there would be of great value based upon my knowledge, experience, leadership, financial acuity, et cetera, with what I do. The organizations that I manage or work in, there's a homeless shelter in my valley that I'm on the board for, also on the executive committee, working through budget issues, et cetera, and I run the facility, the same with the church, finance committee for them, running a deficit budget there, how to basically try to get ourselves back to break even, et cetera. So the knowledge and experience I have working as 3 or 4 different boards today, and prior to that, OFC, the steering committee, and one of the boards at OFC as well, Optical Fiber Communications Conference, just gives me that acumen to be able to support and do the things that need to be done on this board.
All right, thank you. Liz, why don't you go next?
Thank you. So the way I normally do things is I always stay with the rules as they exist, but I try to develop something and anything that I can use to maybe get the org to play a different tune within the rules as they are. And when I joined the program committee 5 years ago, it was February 2020, I immediately recognized a need that we need to have data on everybody who's done all the talks that have been done, who's done them, and how popular are they, meaning how many hits did they get on YouTube. And in the course of developing that data, and really the idea had to do with we were not getting as many submissions for the next NANOG, June of 2020, as we would have obviously because of the pandemic. And the idea was, well, if we knew who's given a lot of talks and maybe how well the talks have done on YouTube, we could identify those people and ask them to come and reprise their talks or do something like that. So in the course of that whole project, I developed a huge resource of just data on who's given the talks and how popular they are. And we heard from Jonathan Black this morning, say somebody had mentioned a person who gives a talk at NANOG, it becomes a thought leader at NANOG. And so I basically have that list. And then on the other side of it, I looked at all the data for who's attending NANOG. And with the idea of maybe this will be of use someday, and it is of use because now we can see attendance is down, and I've developed some information on that, on who are we missing, who's not here today, because I have all that attendance data. And really, we could say that somebody who attends often would be maybe a culture leader at NANOG, and when you put those two data sets together, what you have is a thought leader and a culture leader, and these are the luminaries in the industry. I would say, I think that's debatable, we could debate that, but when we can have a clear look at who's coming and who's giving talks, we can make some inferences from that. And I would like to see all that data rolled out so that it becomes part of the NANOG, digital online presence, so that we can start rewarding people who do a lot of those talks and who do attend often. So that's why I am running for the board. And the other reason, we've developed some other wisdom based on that too. And so there are some projects that I would like to start pushing from the board as well.
Hey, great, thank you. Steve Feldman.
I first started coming to NANOG, starting with number 1 back in the ice ages, I guess it was. As Jeff pointed out this morning, back then we were worried about how to use address space, how to route packets, basically the core technology of the internet. I learned a lot my first couple NANOGs, and I discovered as I kept coming back, I kept learning more. And still today, I almost always learn something new every time I come here. So the organization has meant a lot to me throughout my career, from beginning until now, and I want to give back. I have discovered along the way that my skills have helped a lot in leadership roles in the program committee and on the board. And I want to keep using them as long as you want to let me do it. In a nutshell, that's it.
Thank you. And Matt.
Yeah, I guess I can incorporate a lot of that. It's a great question. My first analog was probably around 20 or so, so it wasn't quite as early. And I never really wanted to be a network engineer. It was not my career path, but every employer I've been at, I've always been responsible for the network. And I feel like NANOG really helped shape a lot of that. And I've heard for the last decade now, we don't have new members. We don't have new folks attending NANOG. And there are now industry events that are replacing this special culture and brand and environment that we have there is incredibly unique. I went to an event last week in Las Vegas that was a bunch of wireless ISPs. And what was interesting there is there was a session on transit versus peering. And the example slides included things like Mae West. So very outdated, content. And very, our content is incredibly unique because we have this non-discriminatory, non-proprietary standards, best practices, really strong values, and we're not exposing that to newer entrances into the market. And so for me, my day job is mostly consulting with a lot of ISPs, and there are plenty of early 20-somethings that want to get into this career, and we are the obvious place to do that. And I think there's some significant changes we need to do to be able to court that type of new engagement, particularly around partnerships. I was really excited to see FBA, the Fiber Broadband Association, out in the exhibit area. And the FBA does do some policy and lobbying work, but they also bring together a lot of fiber operators together. So there's other industry events that I think we can collaborate with and use our brand and our knowledge to be more effective. And then, finally, I think it's really important to also, as others have said on stage, to give back. I feel like I've kind of done the full tour of duty, except the program committee, and it's been really rewarding. And so I think it's time to give back. And as mentioned in my candidate statement, I've been pretty intimately involved with several 501c3s, C6, and C12s. So I'm quite familiar with the financial challenges of being self-sufficient, having built a self-sufficient internet exchange, which is quite challenging. So excited to bring that.
Great, thank you. Next question here. I guess we'll start with Steve Feldman here. What do you see as the current significant strategic opportunities or challenges for NANOG as an organization?
The big ones are dealing with our financial situation and bringing in new people. Starting with finances, obviously the pandemic hit us, and we were lucky enough to have a nice healthy reserve. We've eaten up a good chunk of that. We still have a good chunk left, so we're not in any immediate danger of running out of cash anytime soon, unless we have another pandemic. But we need to get past that. We need to get back to the point where we're bringing in more money than we're spending. And in order to do that, it really just comes down to we've cut everything we can cost-wise pretty much, so we need to bring in more people. New people coming to the meetings, new sponsors, and those feed on each other. You have more attendees, the more the sponsors want to be here. So we really need to figure out how to reach out to people who used to come, people who might want to come but don't know about us, and get them here, get bodies in the door. That's really the big thing. Increasing the community, as I mentioned, is a big piece of that as well. So more people.
All right, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, just taking some notes here. So I think we all agree that the financial situation needs some addressing for the stewardship to continue to have the organization run responsibly. For me, I think one of the challenges is in a post-pandemic era, really adjusting to the changes of return to work and work from home. If we look at the last couple of NANOGs, the era of having large CDN or cloud providers send an entire department or do large sponsorships is over. And so I think what we need to look at is where investment is going. And no ding to Canada, but in the US, we're putting significantly billions into a network that we all touch every day. Those are called access networks or ISPs. And they are not prominent in our environment. They're often not on stage. They're often not in the audience. And those that are here have been ISPs for 2 decades. So I think we need to bring some of that newer talent there. And again, if you go to other industry events, there are significant numbers of service providers that exist, but they don't know about our community, or more importantly, they are not embedded to benefit from, we all talk about the slang of the hallway track. The vast majority of new attendees, it takes several attendances to be able to get embedded into that. So I think we can do better ways to bring newer folks in. And again, I believe that access networks are where investment is going, for good or bad. So I think we can put a lot more focus there. And one of the nice things is that, unlike some of the large scale operators, it's not things like custom protocols, or if you're building 1,500 data centers or something like that. This is very approachable content that I think we need to refocus. In many ways, I don't like the term returning to our roots, but NANOG really started around access networking technologies, and we've really kind of shied away from that, and I think we need to focus back on that, and that would help address, I think, a lot of the talent coming in, and then hopefully address some of the meeting cadence issues. I think as we have younger engineers and support staff join, there are different ways in which they want to receive this content. And 3 in-person meetings a year may not be the right solution. Maybe other ways.
All right, thank you. Steve Clark.
Hey, so obviously I'm on the program committee, and one of the things that we try to do and will continue to try to do, even after I'm off the committee, I hope, with who takes over, is to put together content to not just bring in newcomers, because we have actually a decent number of newcomers that come in every NANOG. The issue is more getting those newcomers to come back again and again and again until they become basically part of the community. And I think that's part of the struggle is we do see lots of newcomers, but we don't seem to do a good job yet of keeping them, back engaged and continuing to go and come to the next set of NANOGs, whether it's 2, 3 a year, whatever. But they need to keep coming back, and they're not. So we need to basically figure out, and I think we talked earlier today on the board meeting, in the members meeting, about basically doing some focus groups to find out from the newcomers what it is that they want to see that will bring them back again for a second and potentially a third and beyond kind of thing. However, it's a tricky or slippery slope because we still also need to keep our current set of attendees, our more senior people, engaged. So doing content, we're looking at things, and the surveys, again, are extremely important, as we've always said, and continue to be, to basically drive things. So what we've done as part of the program committee is brought in more tutorials, brought in more workshops, trying to do more training for the younger, the intermediate, and the junior level engineers. We also need to bring in more content that's going to support more of our senior engineers and more of our senior executives that would continue to come. We have missed, and I looked at the attendee list, we are missing senior level people from most of our customers in the community. They're just not coming anymore. And I don't know if that's because they're not getting the same level of support from the community that their peers are coming to NANOG or not. So the senior level people want to come because they're going to see their peers at their same level, the directors, the VPs, et cetera, and talk about and make deals, et cetera, out in the hallways, et cetera. If they're not seeing their peers at this level, they're going to stop coming. So content has to be brought into place to essentially make sure that they have a reason to come, better marketing to make sure that they know who else is coming to NANOG, this meeting, the next meeting, whatever, in order to make sure that they want to come and attend as well. They go and have those relationships built and reestablish those connections. So, the community itself is based on making connections. That's really what it's all about. And what we need to do is continue to go and bring in new people, keep them in, keep our older, more senior level people, get them back engaged. Part of that is content. Part of that is making sure that they basically are seeing that their peers are coming in. So marketing becomes a very critical piece beyond just the content that we're doing. And I think that's the relevance that we have to come up and do is make sure that we are relevant for them by making sure we have both content as well as information that lets them know they should come because they're going to see the people they want to see and do the things they want to do as part of the community.
Okay, thank you. And Liz.
Thank you. So about 6 months ago, I looked at all the attendance data and I made a report called the Missing Persons Report. And what I did was I looked at the last 10 years of attendance, so 5 years, 8 years of attendance, 4 years before the pandemic and 4 years after the pandemic. And I started comparing who used to come here and who is missing from the most recent NANOGs that we've held to try and figure out where that gap is. Because the gap is part of the reason for the financial issues that are happening. And if we can, the idea was figure out who's not coming anymore and why. Maybe we could fix that problem and resolve the attendance issue and resolve the financial issue. And in the course of that research, what I finally kind of came up with is people are missing from across the board, some industries more so than others. And the question was, okay, well, in those industries where there's more so, which happens to be in the ISP industry, which is where I'm from, why are there people not showing up anymore? And having nothing to do with my company whatsoever, as an individual saying this, there is recognition that an issue happens because every single thing that NANOG produces is streamed as it's happening and then eventually is put up on YouTube. And that people who are maybe not at the more senior levels and whose jobs is not to come into the halls and talk to people have a hard time justifying the expense of coming to a conference when they can see everything they need to see streamed during and online on YouTube afterwards. So from there, we the leap of how do we use this information to help us is there something that we can produce at NANOG that is here only and would not be streamed so that people who would want to reject that request they would see that there is something here that would be a reason to go and not just to watch online. And this is really where we came up with the idea of the workshops, because if we can have classroom style learning, then, and obviously we're not going to stream those, because in a classroom, you want everybody to be free to ask questions, and people take a lot of time, and as you're building stuff, it's not something that we're going to videotape. So the idea would be, if we can kind of produce more of those at levels at which people who are missing would want to see them, maybe we can get those people back. And that's really the thing that I have been working on for the last 6 months. And if I am voted onto the board, I would take that as a kind of affirmative that we should continue to move in that direction.
All right, thank you. A lot of you have spoken about sort of the younger engineering staff level, right? The junior engineers, and I got involved in NANOG through my association with Aaron, but I went to an Aaron meeting so I could get V6. And I came in at the tail end of the 2007-2008 St. Louis NANOG. And I hadn't really heard of it before. So it was kind of that was sort of my first, and that's what started the seed. But as a junior engineer, I couldn't get approval to go. But it's that sort of outreach thing, I think, that's really important. So I'm going to start with Matt and ask, what is your plan for NANOG to reach and include that next generation of networking professionals?
Yeah, exciting. I get to be first. I think what we've heard is oftentimes we see NANOG as sort of this one-trick pony. We've got this box of you need to physically attend. It's 3 times a year. We do it back-to-back with Aaron, et cetera. And that's clearly not how a newer generation wants to receive content. As Elizabeth said, earlier, there are other ways that we can deliver the type of content that we have. I think, in particular, partnerships where NANOG embeds themselves in other adjacent industries and organizations. So, as I mentioned, WISPA is a good example. FISPA is starting to grow. Fiber Broadband Association, there's probably bigger than both of those combined for their annual event. And so those are really interesting ways to bring the pipeline in, because we're seeing a broad set of engineers that attend those events. So everything from outside plant to legal, to logistics, to literally splicing, to configuring routers, aiming antennas, et cetera. As others have said in the panel, the vast majority of those folks that are at that career stage cannot afford to come to NANOG. They cannot get the approval. So I think the secret sauce really of NANOG is our content and our knowledge. And so if we can distribute that in other forms and other mediums, I think that would be incredibly powerful. Again, because as you're early in your career, you're not going to be able to translate to your boss the value of the hallway track, or necessarily the knowledge that you're going to gain from frequent, visiting of, different cities around the U.S. It's just really expensive for a lot of folks. So I think instead of trying to keep modifying the meeting, we've done that for 2 decades. That's not working. It's the content and the relationships people come from. So if we can export that to other avenues, I think that's incredibly important. Again, there's different ways we can look at that. So, at one end of the spectrum, it could be a paywall or an organization sponsorship to get to certain videos or content. It could be, again, partnering with some of these, I would say, industry aligned or almost kind of sister organizations. As I think we've all said, once you're here and once you're embedded, it's easy to see the value. But if you've never heard of it and it's hard to justify, why don't we go to where these new opportunities are? And so I think that type of partnership is really crucial for, again, reaching new membership potential and new attendees.
All right, thank you. Steve Plutz.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. So I hear what Matthew says, and to some extent I get concerned only because if we're going out, and again, our media already exists out there. I mean, I can go to YouTube and put in NANOG BGP and find 8 talks on NANOG presentations on BGP, some tutorial based, that are out there already for people to be able to pull down, look at, deal with. et cetera, and learn and get somewhat trained. Obviously, hands-on is the most important part of training. I think the concept that Liz has brought to the PC of doing on-site training, which is only available on-site, helps to give the junior engineer the opportunity to go to his senior management and say, hey, I need to go to NANOG to get training on this specific area. It's only available at NANOG on site. Please, can I go? I think they have a better chance of being able to get that approval to come to NANOG for the first time, maybe the second time. The key again is we need to get them to come back again and again and again. And so that means more of that same kind of content that's going to help them do a better job, in their roles, and eventually get to a point where they can get into higher levels of management within their organizations. So distributing our content, I think, is very important, but doing it in a way that helps us to grow is the important thing. And just handing it out and giving it is not the best way to do it, because we're already doing that. And as we've seen, our attendance has shrunk over the period of time since COVID. And so what we're trying to do is build it back up by offering content through the program committee that is on-site only, and then getting that information out to the public early enough so they have time to be able to position to their management why they need to come to NANOG, because it's only available at NANOG on-site. They can't get it on YouTube or any other kind of medium. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Liz?
Could you repeat the question?
You bet you. What is your plan for NANOG to include and reach the next generation of networking professionals?
So I think we kind of talked about the idea of the workshops and how that has kind of come about. And as you know, Stephen has mentioned, I think that that really would be a way to return NANOG to kind of more previous levels of attendance. Because if we can develop these workshops and have this classroom style learning, and I talked about before about, if we, per Jonathan Black, if somebody who speaks at NANOG is a thought leader, and I think that somebody who attends NANOG a lot is a culture leader, we put those two things together and they become kind of an industry luminary. The idea would be, that's the ask and that's the reward for those people who have been doing this. And so far I've reached out to 2 people who I consider to be, per the data, industry luminaries, and said, would you teach these classes? Could you develop data and curriculum for us? And so far I've had very positive feedback from that. So the idea is to, when we're talking about this classroom experience, how's it different than other classroom experience that can be had in anybody's hometown or city? The difference is, because we can have really the best and the brightest of NANOG, the people who attend a lot, who give a lot of talks, and who obviously love NANOG because they are doing those things, that anyone could get an education from those kinds of people. That would be the differentiator between, that would say, oh no, I need to go to NANOG because this person's teaching it. And instead of, being able to get thrown off and not come here anyway, get the same kind of education from, I guess, YouTube. So that's how I would proceed.
All right, thank you. And Steve?
If you look at our finances, and if you were here this morning, you saw that almost all of our revenue is meeting related. People pay attendance fees, sponsors pay to be here. So if we want to survive, we need money coming in, which means we need people to be here. That's not to say that we shouldn't ignore other aspects of the community, the mailing list, the new Discord, cooperating with other conferences and things like that. But those need to be done in addition to, not instead of, making our conferences more attractive. The things that Liz and Steve were talking about with the workshops and tutorials, I think is a huge piece of what we need to do, and it's a great start to bringing in people and finding excuses for younger people to come here. And I encourage the PC and board to keep going down that path. The Discord, I think, is going to help. Young people seem to like platforms like that, and I can see why, because they're addictive. And we need to keep doing that as well. Matt pointed out that we need to rethink who our target audience is in terms of the industry. Years ago, it was the large ISPs, large backbone providers, transit providers, who made up the bulk of our attendance, plus the large router vendors, Cisco and Juniper. These days, it's not the same people. We have, as Matt pointed out, the rural broadband people getting lots of money, but don't really know how to build networks yet. This is a great place for them to come, perhaps, and reaching out to those people by the PC, by our marketing efforts, I think is an important aspect of what we need to do. The automation community, which is, there's some overlap with us, not entire, because they also include a lot of enterprise, is another place where mutual cooperation could probably benefit everybody. And speaking of enterprise, there are still enterprise networks out there who use BGP and things like that. They don't necessarily outsource everything to a cloud provider yet. Bringing in some of those people who do similar work is also, I think, still a great thing we could do.
All right, thank you. All of you have been around NANOG for quite a while. Some more than others, but you've put in your time. So what skills or background do you uniquely bring to NANOG's board that you feel is missing and needed? And I'm going to start with Liz.
Thanks. My first job out of college was as an analyst at a mergers and acquisition company, and we were basically pulling apart companies and looking at what their value was so that we could sell them. And I retain all of that, even though I have been a network engineer for the last 20 years. But I don't get to use that side of my brain very often, but I would very much like to, if I could find a place to marry the two activities, like the board of directors, that would be fantastic for me, because that's something that I think I have uniquely. So there's definitely that, and then all of the volunteer activities that I've been doing for the last 10 years or so outside of NANOG, which I have seen the ways different companies are dealing with and struggling with the same kinds of problems that we struggle with. And I could talk about a few. I'm not sure how much time I have.
We give about 2 to 3 minutes per answer, so you've got some time.
Okay. Like one of the places I volunteered at is for Tech Girls, and what they do is they produce these long decks of curriculum of all kinds of different subjects. One of the subjects is, say, network engineering, and then what a person like me can do is sign up and teach the class. And then Tech Girls does the whole thing. They get the class together, they bring lunch, and all you really have to do is show up and be the brightest thing you can be and teach this class to girls to get them interested in STEM topics. And I really like the model because you can have a teacher come in. It's so much easier to go and teach to somebody else's deck. Not when you don't have to create an 80-page deck and it's already created for you. The deck can be replicated across the country, and teachers can come in and not have to worry about a single other thing than just being a backstop of knowledge, helping kids along, but basically just teaching. It's pretty simple. And I really like the model very much in terms of education. I think that because it's replicatable across different areas. And we kind of talk about these workshops and how could we, say, hold BGP 101, basic, intermediate, and advanced, say, each one of those classes once a year and just repeat it over and over again. I kind of look at that model as being a place that I would hope that we could go through, because then it's dependable. And we could say a year in advance, yes, we're running this class at this time. And people could make their plans based on that. And maybe if they're really education classes, people could put it on their education budgets instead of travel budgets.
Oh, thank you. Matt.
Yeah, so I don't want to focus too much on, I think, my technical professional career. I've certainly worked at ASs from 2 digits to 5 or 6. And I think what's relevant is the fact that I have been an employee and also started multiple nonprofits and know the unique challenges of nonprofit organizations on how to build relationships, and as everyone else has said, really the fiduciary responsibility that's really important for nonprofit organizations. I've been doing that for a long time. In the case of the IXP that I started, we were all free, it was volunteers, it's now self-sufficient, has been able to grow. We can buy more than just optics and swag at this point. But that took a lot of fostering with a community. And I think part of what I bring is this idea of when can we get out of our comfort zone but still be true to the mission. So a recent example is, with my IXP, we're actually looking at developing a layer 3 partial route service. A traditional IXP would never consider that. But that's the direction that certain content providers are going. And that's what some of the things we're looking at to adjust to our membership base of something that's non-traditional, but still gets them the same outcome, the same engagement they would have with the community. So I think that's very important. Otherwise, I also have quite a bit of relationships outside of the NANOG sphere. I've spent the last 2 years at an organization called Connect Humanity, which is doing private investments into service providers throughout North America. And so I've talked to literally hundreds of ISPs to evaluate whether they receive funding or not, or other forms of participation. And to echo what Elizabeth said earlier, is that oftentimes part of the challenge that a lot of us have in this room is we're neurospicy. We're subject matter experts, AKA we're horrible at developing training and content. And so I think that would be one of my big focuses is bringing in some professional learning development folks to capture some of that knowledge and be able to distribute it. And also what others have said, I think part of what we are missing is we often have the really low-end basic BGP 101 that's still needed. And then we have a lot of presentations that are either theoretical or things that are at high scale. And I think we're missing things in the middle that I deal with a lot. And we don't have those type of presentations or those attendees. And for me, those are things that are, I think, really important that we need to look at. And those are different parts of the industry that we can develop. So a lot of us are used to building a budget, doing proof of concept work, vendor negotiations. I didn't learn that at NANOG. I learned that on the job. And so I think there's a lot of mid-career content that we could really focus on. And it's not just, chartering the PC to court that content. It also is our sponsorships, where we hold our events, and how we distribute the knowledge that we're sharing.
All right. Thank you. Steve Plott.
Repeat the question again, because we've had a lot of dialogue go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
To make sure we're focused on what we're really trying to get.
Basically, we're looking for what skills or background that you bring uniquely to NANOG's board that you feel is either missing or needed.
That's what I'm on. So program management, marketing, participative management in the process, setting objectives, setting the guidelines for those objectives, working with the team to execute on those objectives, and then being there to oversee, to make sure if there's any issues or problems that we deal through the stopgap issues in order to get to the positive conclusion we're looking for with regard to that given thing. Again, we said before, one of the biggest challenges we have is getting information out to people early enough that they can basically deal with their management in order to be able to come to a NANOG. So part of the issue is the timing of when we deliver the messages out to allow them to be able to get to their senior management and then be able to essentially get the approval to come to a NANOG and do those types of things. The other thing, obviously, we talked about content and the fact that the content needs to be here, not just for the beginning engineer, but also the intermediate as well as the senior. I disagree with Matt from the standpoint we have content here. Example, Lee Howard's tutorial on IPv6 is tied towards intermediate level engineers, not for beginners, but intermediate guys. We also have stuff that's coming in from another person that's basically junior level stuff for how to do IP and BGP routing, et cetera. So we're across the board delivering content that hits each type or part of our community and their level of knowledge and experience and what they think they might want to see. So I honestly think that the content's there. It's just really getting the message out early enough and making sure the message is coming through clearly that people know what is coming and they can get the approval to be part of NANOG. In order for us to be successful, it is a combination of 2, maybe 3 things. First, as we said before, and I think we've all agreed, that membership and increasing the number of people coming into NANOG is very, very critical in order to be able to get a revenue base there. Just as important or more important is you need to be able to have sponsors come in because they're the big dollars, right? A gold sponsor coming in, a diamond sponsor coming in, $50,000 sponsorship. Yeah, they get 4, 5, 6 different passes to come in. That's a minimal amount of money compared to what they're bringing in from a cash perspective to support our organization and what we're doing forward. They obviously need to know what's coming on to make sure that there are people going to be here to justify them spending the money to be sponsors. So no one wants to be a sponsor of an event that only has 50 or 100 people. If you have 1,000 people, you're more likely to have that person want to come in and be a sponsor. And so if they know that there's going to be a decent level of people there that they can see, talk to, get their message across to, they're more willing to basically come in and be a sponsor. So sponsorships are very important, and that means getting the message out that there's a lot of people coming, and then they will appear and they will come, so to speak. Well, I hate to use that term because it's so, right? But a cliche.
All right.
Continue.
Thank you. And Steve. Phil.
Well, since I'm an incumbent, I won't bring anything new if you reelect me. But I do think I do believe I add some value currently. My background, obviously, I was an engineer. I still am an engineer, which means I tend to treat problems analytically and don't jump to conclusions if I can avoid it. I also have, having been around for a long time, have seen NANOG do a lot of things, some good, some bad. And I remember those things. So if I see us running down a path that we've tried before and it didn't work last time, I will point out that it may not work again this time. But I think my biggest skill is a soft one, in that I think I'm really good at consensus building. It's important I believe it's important that a board like ours present a unified front to the community, which means that we're not arguing in public about our different opinions. We argue a lot in private, and that's a good thing. And I think part of where I add value is consensus building. We talk through our issues and express our viewpoints, and at the end of the day, after having discussed everything, asked some interesting probing questions, and really thought about what we're trying to do, we almost invariably end up with unanimous decisions on how to proceed. I mean, in the last year, changing executive directors was a big example of that. It took us a long time to figure out what we wanted to do and how to do it, and we did it, and I personally think we did a really good job of it. So I believe if you re-elect me, I can continue doing good stuff like that.
All right. All right. Let's see here. We're going to jump back to Steve Plott here and have you talk about what you think NANOG's #1 priority is and why.
Did someone record what I said 5 minutes ago? If they did, repeat.
Yeah.
It could be close, or
Sure. So again, so relevance, I think we have established that. We are definitely a relevant organization. If someone thinks that that's a critical thing, we are relevant. Our major requirements now are basically getting attendance up, the number of attendees being a combination of both junior as well as senior level people in all of our community companies and businesses. The next part of that is getting to the sponsors and having the sponsors see that there is value in them being sponsors by having a decent level of attendance coming in and the type of attendance that's coming in. So stratify, do demographics, et cetera, so they can see the fact that there is something worthwhile that they should spend their money to become sponsors here. And those two things essentially will help to drive revenue for us. And if we continue to manage our costs and do a positive spin on that, we should be able to get to a break-even and cash flow positive position. Beyond that, I think the future for us is becoming a better community for the country, and not just to our own organization and our own set of things we do with ISPs, backbone providers, content providers, data centers, et cetera, but to the general public as well. So that gets us more, as both Steve and Matthew have said, access networks and getting involved more and more in access networks and how we can help to deliver content and support for access networks to be able to deliver to more people than are currently being delivered to today. Leave it at that.
All right. Matt.
Yeah, no problem. I think some of the folks on the stage here have reiterated, getting folks to attend, and that's an incredibly high bar. Again, both early career or with a lot of organizations cutting back on travel approval. I consider one of our biggest challenges, as you said, what's the number one, is really outreach to new communities. And we can consider that delivered in a bunch of different mediums, whether it's online or it's at other industry events. But we should consider those as a funnel, as a pipeline of bringing folks in. And that's the first step. It's not justifying $3,500 or $4,000 by the time you get here, in the hotel and the flights and everything else. I think there's other ways we can bring folks in. Treat it almost like a sampler platter or a preview of what you could learn and the relationships that you could build at NANOG. I also agree with Steve Feldman. My personality style is not personal attacks. It's around cooperation and rough consensus. That's worked fairly well for the internet. I do disagree that content is a challenge. I work with those access networks every day, and there is a lot of content that's missing here. But again, it's not just the content, it's the environment for them to feel comfortable and welcomed, and there are other events that are meeting that need. I do agree that we do have credibility and we have a strong brand, but there's frankly a lot of folks that are building service providers that have never heard of NANOG, having gone to an event just last week and inquiring literally with dozens of people have never heard of it. And they could take advantage of what we have.
All right, thank you. Steve Feldman.
Could you repeat the question again, please?
What do you think should be NANOG's number one priority, and why?
The number one priority, I've said this a few times, is fixing our finances so that we can continue to worry about the rest of it. Fixing finances means attracting more people. As I wrote here, increasing participation at all levels, including career paths, new relevant parts of the industry, and sponsors from those parts of the industry. We need to find ways to market to them, to do outreach, and to entice them to come here. Some of that will involve online programs, but at the end of the day, we want them to come here and give us money.
All right. And Liz.
I think that the number one priority of NANOG needs to at least include the goal of that NANOG as a industry, as an organization, should be seeing people when they are bringing what they have to NANOG. That NANOG, I would hope, can be the best about that. That if somebody's bringing everything that they have to this organization, they're giving talks, they're coming often, they're being the person in the industry that people look to, that NANOG should recognize that. I think one of the best things that I did on the program committee when I was, I guess, vice chair 2 years ago, I created the Unsung Hero Awards, and it's basically for people on the PC who are doing the thankless work that is not recognized unless it doesn't get done. Recognize that. So people who are voting a lot and people who are doing the very thankless job of, the moderator who's moderating the online presence, those kind of jobs, and who's shepherding and those kind of things. because I believe that when we see people doing those things and doing them really well, you know, the top 20% of people are doing 80% of the work, from the Pareto principle, I guess that is, that those people should be rewarded for the effort that they're putting in. And that if we recognize our speakers like that and our attendees like that too, those attendees who have come here many, many times and are the culture leaders, that recognition will help to set the standard of what we're looking for and what we want, and other people will try to achieve that. And that's how we can get the groundswell of effort that people are putting in to realize that there's a payoff at the end. You are seen for that. So I think that's really where NANOG should be focusing.
All right. I'll do one more written question here, and then we'll take it to the audience and remote. So what do you personally want to get from serving on the NANOG board? Liz.
That's a wonderful question. Honestly, I love this organization. I want to see it continue into the future in its best and healthiest way. And I've put some effort into figuring out like what is actually going on, what does the data say that we're doing, and from there have kind of developed plans about here's how we could make little adjustments, and many adjustments have been made based on those. You know, the moderators and the intros and the script and all that kind of stuff came out of that work. But there is other work that, you know, I would like to push from a leadership perspective to see that it is done in a way that will enhance NANOG, will enhance every single person's experience, enhance the experience of the people who are coming into the workshops where they're being taught by an industry leader, and then the people who are giving the talks for us, that they are having the best experience and that wherever else they go, they think, man, NANOG would have done this so much better. So that's really what I would like to see. When I come out, what I would get out of it is the knowledge that I have helped in the way that I can, and that would make me happy.
Okay, thank you. Steve Plotz.
Sorry, I put the mic down. What do I expect to get out of NANOG? So I'm retired from work. I don't have a full-time job. I have a consulting business, which I don't spend a lot of time on because of all the things that I volunteer for. So my position in life right now is give back to all the communities that are meaningful to me, and that are important to me, that I want to see flourish, grow, and continue to go forward into the future. And NANOG is, of course, one of those, which is why I'm here and continue to be here. So all I expect to get out of being part of the board for NANOG is the satisfaction of working with people that I enjoy, people that I love, and be able to be successful in executing a strategy and see what the results are for that strategy. That's it.
Right. Thank you. And I apologize for mispronouncing your last name. Matt.
Yeah, I think for me, it's incredibly satisfying to see the growth of folks that attend NANOG, not just new attendees or early career, but really helping support that journey. And I get a lot of satisfaction, you know, being able to shepherd that. I don't like the term mentoring, but in many of my jobs, I've had the same consistent team. Folks follow me and support me. And so I think there's a lot of strong values that I want to retain within NANOG. I think we have a very unique way of delivering content, and a very respected authority figure, if you will. So I think I want to continue to support that, and we don't need to change the fundamentals of NANOG. I think it's just really adjusting for the realities of both the financial environment that we operate in and how work is being done. And lastly, I think you know, expanding initiatives for different communities to feel inclusive. You know, like we still use the term DEI. That's not really an appropriate term anymore. And there are other groups that are marginalized within NANOG. And so I think if we can start to bring a sense of more community that would be very important, because a lot of times we have a sense of community because we see the value of the hallway track. We see the value of those relationships. And so for me, seeing someone new or mid-career that gets the benefit from those relationships is incredibly important, for me personally.
All right.
Well said.
Thank you. And Steve here.
I think we're all in pretty violent agreement here. We don't have to discuss it behind the scenes. I mean, for me, as I mentioned, I came into NANOG fairly early in my career, and I've learned a lot. It's immensely helped my career by being here. But I've also made a lot of really good friends. And I want to see this continue for a new generation of network engineers, so we can, in 30 years, have people saying the same things on this stage.
All right. Thank you. All right, that's it for all of my pre-recorded questions. So I guess we'll open it up to the studio audience here. If anybody has any questions for our board candidates, if we have anything remote, I encourage you to step up to the microphone here on House left. Go ahead and keep that one up here. That way
We need another mic then.
move over to
We need another mic.
this. We have the mic over here on the left side. So
We'll force them to get in that line.
we don't have a ton of people stepping up to the microphone, so I think we can handle the queue on one side.
We have one question from the online community right now, and that's from Matt Peacock.
What a surprise.
Steve talked about the lack of returning first-timers. We have a constant funnel of newcomers, but they don't come back for a second meeting. What thoughts do each one of you have to bring newcomers back for second and subsequent meetings?
Who wants to start?
I will start, I guess. An advantage of hindsight. So we have been asking ourselves the same question since I started here almost. We've had a pretty consistent rate of newcomers at every meeting. It used to be around 30%, maybe it's a little bit lower now. And we always used to wonder why these people never come back. And my personal feelings is that two main reasons. One of them is they get here and realize it's not interesting to them for whatever reason. Their boss made them come, or it was in town and they thought it might be interesting. And the second reason why, and I don't know there's a whole lot we can do about that. Second reason why people might not want to come back is because they don't feel like they're included. And that is something we can really fix. We try to do that with the newcomers' lunches or breakfast now, I guess it is. Try to do that with some of the mentorship and other new programs along those lines. I think we need to continue and expand those, and that will help bring those people back.
All right. Liz, why don't you go next here?
Thank you. So while I was doing my research on attendees, what I found was that in total, did you guys know about almost 18,000 people have ever attended a NANOG in the entire world? Of those, in the entire history of NANOG, of those 18,000 people, 75% of them only attend once. Only 25% of people go on to become repeat attendees. And I really feel for the people who only attend once, because I can remember my first time attending. It was about 2009, and sitting in the audience just like this, and just everything coming so fast, and feeling as though I did not know what was going on. I could not understand what was happening. And I brought that, when I started looking and doing data analysis, the first thing I did with that was I started making the introductions, so that now when somebody comes to the stage, our moderator says, welcome this person. Some information we have and some we don't, but in general it should be, this person is coming in from this place. We want to know where people are from, and also how many times have they talked at NANOG before and how many times they've attended NANOG before. And I think just by adding those guidelines around at least even our speakers, I think and I hope that it makes it more comfortable for people who are coming for the first time, who are feeling like they don't know what's going on. Like, at least they know something. I know who the speaker is. It's their first time speaking, in which case I'll encourage them. They've been here 20 times, in which case they know what they're talking about, and I can, settle in for what they're telling me. They're a esteemed, valuable member of this industry. So I guess I would, if I had my way, I would build out those introductions and make sure that, and have even more of that kind of information, that that when somebody's sitting in the audience and they're just trying to catch the program, there's at least one thing that they can depend on, and it's, I know who the speaker is in general, I know where they're from, I know where they are in the industry, and just make that more regular, and hopefully that would, help those people to develop a comfort level and want to come back.
All right. Steve?
I'm on. Yes, I'm on. Good. So at every NANOG, I try to sit by newcomers when I have breakfast and lunch and ask them, how's it feel? What are you doing? I know it's a lot. It's coming through a fire hose. What are the things you're looking to understand? What do you want to know? What do you want to hear? And then help to direct them to certain content that will give them the things that they think they want to see initially as part of that. So part of that experience. So I think it's very important that we help newcomers see and get what they want and help target them into certain workshops or tutorials or content that's there to help give them a little bit of background on where they are. Yes, and again, I mean, Liz does just an absolute tremendous job of doing data analysis for us. Without her being on the program committee to do that, we would not be able to do the things that we're doing with regard to delivering content to help newcomers as well as intermediate and senior people. But I think the newcomers, we have a newcomers orientation, but it's not a touch and feel kind of a thing. It's really a, here's what goes on, here's what we're doing, this is what we did, everything else. But they don't have that one-to-one connection coming out of that meeting. They walk away, and it's like a fire hose in that meeting as well. Because it's like, oh, all these things I have to understand and learn and know and what to do and where to go. So it takes a lot of personal one-on-one touch. And I'm not saying we have to go and put mentors in place day one for every newcomer to help channel them through their first NANOG, give them a little level of comfort, et cetera. But a little bit of one-on-one time helps dramatically. So the suggestion from me to the community is, as you see a newcomer, sit with them, talk to them, find out what they think, find out how it's going, ask them what they're looking for, help to direct them into the things that will help them get the things they think they want. And then they may even get more things they didn't think they wanted to have by being here. And then they'll hopefully come back again. And we won't lose them like we have been for the last 12 years I've been here.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I think, building those relationships is just really key. The reality for me is NANOG is still seen as the cis old white men of the internet, for better or good. And that's not the type of marketing that is going to be attractive to new attendees, and we have improved that over time. But there are other initiatives that could be useful, again, mid-career initiatives like soft skills and other developments there. A lot of the panelists have talked about once they're here, we can bring folks on their journey. For me, I disagree with that. The outreach needs to happen outside of the in-person meetings. That's the funnel that we need to develop. And part of that is making folks aware of the different communities we have within NANOG. I'd been attending NANOG for probably 16 plus years. And it wasn't until, I think it was Louis and Kat that did a talk on basically being neurospicy. It wasn't until then that I felt accepted by the community. And so again, different outreach events we need to think about. And there's a bunch of mediums we can do that, whether it's online videos or going to other industry events. But for me, it's important to reach them outside of the in-person event.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other, we do have a.
There's a queue, I'm sure. It's a NANOG. Not so much, first, my name is John Brown. I'm not representing any particular logo on a polo shirt. I don't really have a question. I have more a couple of comments, if I may, real quick. And if anybody wants to opine on them, they certainly may.
You're going to provide commentary at the microphone at NANOG.
What's and what is unique about that?
Exactly.
Having my first NANOG be NANOG 10, having been the host and sponsor of NANOG 12 and NANOG 19, a little bit of perspective. I still remember my first NANOG 10. I also remember walking up to a guy that I really had a lot of respect for based on what I saw on the mailing list of learning about BGP, and I could just barely spell it then. And getting yelled at by that guy that I didn't know anything, didn't know what I was doing, and we'll use the initials RB. Some will know who I mean. Right. One of the things I will say is that in the mid-tier ISP community, NANOG is many times viewed as that elite place where the gods of the internet operate and run and so forth. And if you're not Zeus, you don't get to show up. I've attended WISPA for 20 years, so I was there last week. There's an amazing bunch of people there. Amazing chunk of those people need to be here. And so what I would encourage each of you candidates to think about if you get elected to the board is we need to not only have ambassadorship here, but we need to sort of do like what Aaron does with some of its AC and board members where they send them out. We need to look at funding money. So this is a money spend, and I understand we have a deficit issue, but we need to spend money to send ambassadors from NANOG to WISPA, FISPA, fiber broadband, et cetera, and get out there and work with those communities. And there are other smaller regional NOGs that are happening around the world, right? Albuquerque has a NOG that's now happened a couple of times over the last few years. We need to get into those communities and help them understand we exist and why we're relevant to those people in those areas. As I said on the Discord channel a few minutes ago, if I'm an ISP that's up in Northern California that's just got double-digit millions of dollars from the federal government to build fiber amongst the redwood trees, I suspect Sienna, Cisco, whomever will be in Beer and Gear tonight will want to talk to me because I have money to spend. And so we want to get to those folks and we want to bring those folks in. I personally think NANOG needs to bifurcate a little bit. We have the senior folks we need to deal with, and we also need to still figure out how to bring in the fresh blood. So think about that as you contemplate your new role as a board member. At the end of the day, I will say that from NANOG 10 to NANOG 92, we have done great strides forward, and we've done a lot of great things to improve NANOG. Hence one of the reasons I'm back, for better or worse. Anyway, that's the end of my commentary at NANOG. I will now turn it over to the esteemed Patrick.
Just a second. Did anybody have a response for John or comments?
I would like to say something.
Sure, Liz.
So in the first research I did, I was looking at all the talks that had been done, and then I just correlated on YouTube how many hits the talk got on YouTube. And I spent a lot of time categorizing our talks, so I know at a larger, what is it? Is this about? And is this an IP routing protocol? And is it BGP or is it an IGP? And then at the end, I was able to kind of squash that all together and figure out what are the talks at NANOG that are the most popular as judged by the fact that they got the most hits on YouTube. And one of the things that was apparently very, very clear from that was that our optical talks that we have going on here, they get zillions, many, many thousands, tens of thousands of hits on YouTube. And from that, I kind of, when I first did, Steve remembers this, when I first did the research, I came into the PC, waving my information and going, we need to pair up with the optical organizations who are running these kind of conferences because their talks are like money. They are getting tons of hits. We need to have more of them come in. And it kind of hasn't really gone anywhere very far. But also if I think about all of the other categories of talks that get tons of hits on YouTube, general engineering education is in the top 3. After optical, and another one that's getting tons of hits right now is on RPKI. So I think that way of kind of measuring how we're doing, I think is a good path. I'd like to continue going on that, and of seeing, all right, if this thing is the most popular, how can we get people who are doing that thing to come into NANOG to give it? I think that's a great path too, and I would like to have that kind of thing put more systematically into NANOG, so it's not just me and some spreadsheets.
Okay. Anyone else?
I mean, I definitely agree with John's comments that we need to continue to do outreach to other events. I like the suggestion of, going, having some sponsorship for ambassadors to be out at other events. So I think that's great feedback, and I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. All right. Mr. Gilmore.
Hi, my name is Patrick, and I work with Tigger. So this group is probably better ready to answer this question. But many years ago, it came to the attention. I think Dan brought it up, but I'm not sure who, saying that we never asked anybody have they, for instance, read the financial report. So we talked about deficit spending and things like that. Maybe we should remove the incumbent, but I'm wondering, show of hands, because the problem is if one of you answers this, then all the rest of you will know. Does anybody know how much money we lost last year? Does anybody know how long our reserves will last? Show of hands. Who does it? On the board. Okay. So all four of you actually do know that. Show of hands, how many of you have actually read the financial report in the last, say, 2 years? Okay. So remember that a board seat, NANOG is an actual corporation. I know because, I helped create it, but you are fiduciaries, and there is D&O, but you are still fiduciaries. There's more than just technical stuff about it. It's good that we're trying to get people in, but there's a baseline thing that you have to do as an actual board member, that you have to run the corporation, you have to run the company. And I want to just, I'm not expecting you to answer that, but if you would like to give a comment on why you think that not just how networks work and how to get people in, but you actually know how a company functions, and you can get from the highest level, from HR, finance, legal, et cetera, on down. But these are important things. And if you don't think that you have that experience, if you don't think that you are ready for that, this is a time to do some soul searching. If you are, good on you. I'll leave it up to you if you want to comment on it.
Would anyone like to comment?
I don't really have much to say, Patrick. I mean, I already know those issues, have dealt with those issues, and have those in 3 other organizations that I'm on the board for, of having, yes, Tigger, too. Sorry, Tigger. As an example, so my church has been running in a deficit budget, and it's similar to here as well. There are certain things you look at from a budget perspective, what your expenses are, where your costs are, things like that. You try to figure out where can we minimize, cut, remove, and change the number, if you will, of to what the expenses are. If you're trying to get to a position of being break even or cash flow positive, that then becomes, quote unquote, the bogey number. So you need to make sure that whatever you do from a financial perspective, you can at least achieve that bogey number in order to basically not continue to go and be negative from a cash perspective and taking from your reserves, et cetera, et cetera. So in the case of the church, we've removed all the things we can possibly remove, and we're still sitting in a deficit budget situation. So then what you do is you look at, okay, so let's look and see what our pledges have been. So the donations, everything else, what's come in, what this year, what last year's were, what the year before was, everything else, see what those numbers are, make an estimate for a pledge drive, how much money we're going to expect to come in from that. And then at that point you say, okay, so I'm still going to be deficit budget because when I look at my historical, what's come in versus what I know I cannot go any lower on from a cost perspective or expense perspective, I'm still negative. What do we do? So the thing you do is you look and say, okay, this is how much money we expect to get in based upon that. Now let's see if we can get our people to give more. So then you run through scenarios. That's my financial guy, so there you go. So then you go through and you say, all right, if we take all of our current parishioners and we say, could you give 10% more than last year? See what that number becomes. Does that number get you to break even or better? If the answer is no, then you say, okay, let's go to 11, let's go to 12. Once you get to a point where you get to break even, then you go out and you start to make.
Stop calling him.
Yeah, so I'll deal with that later. Hopefully I won't get a call again, we'll see. Then you get to the point where you actually hit your break-even number. Then you go off and say, okay, let's put together a program that essentially we can go and pitch to our parishioners saying, you know, we're in a deficit situation, you know that, we've showed you the numbers. If we can all dig down and say we'll commit to adding 7%, 8% to last year's pledge and get them to all agree to do that, then you get to a point of being break even. And that's just one scenario to look at.
In the interest of time, I'll keep this quick, but I did want to toss in, yes, it is very important for the board to have an understanding of finances, and especially once elected to review those financial statements and understand what positive and negative numbers mean and all that, and the reserve is finite and all that. But one thing I do want to emphasize is that we need the board to have a nice breadth of experience and skills. We don't want everybody focused on the same thing and have other areas go unaddressed. One of the things that Jonathan wants to do, I believe, with us over the next year is a skills gap analysis, so we actually understand what we're good at and what we're not good at, and can figure out how to bring in people who can help us in the areas where we see some weaknesses.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Patrick's comments that there is quite a bit of knowledge and experience required for NANOG to run efficiently. And I've done everything from on-call to C-suite, so very familiar with HR processes and fiduciary responsibility. I think, you know, for this audience, you know, I took a nonprofit organization that was all volunteer run, all donations, now has a 400 gigabit backbone and is in 8 data centers and has a reserve. So I've demonstrated I can do that. And so I think that is important, but I would definitely agree with Steve Feldman's comment that if we all had a strong financial background, that would be an unequal board. So I think we need a diverse set of you know, skills and knowledge to be successful.
Did you want to comment?
I guess, you know, I think about 25 years ago when I was an analyst at a mergers and acquisitions company, and we were basically analyzing, we were telling them how much per the marketplace their company would be worth, small to medium-sized businesses, so, you know, up to about $5 million. And if the business owner was not happy with that, we would give them recommendations about things that they could do in order to improve their balance sheets to increase the value of the business. And oftentimes those things were, I mean, there's some tricks, but a lot of very real things that people can do. So I kind of come from that as a background, and it's not something that I have gotten to use at any time in the last 20 years, but I'm definitely bringing that sensibility, and I understand that side of the house, but I also very much agree with what Steve is saying about that the organization needs to have diversity, and when I say that, I am talking about where people are coming from and the sensibility that they're bringing to everything that they do. And that if we have everybody comes to the board and has the same sensibility and is marching in lockstep with each other, then, you know, the problems are just going to stay the same and not change. We need people who are thinking different things and who are throwing different ideas in there and trying to change a little bit so that we can wind up in a different place eventually.
All right. I see we're under the 10-minute mark. We have 2 people left, so I'm going to keep your responses to a minute or less, and less, I think, right?
Yes.
All right.
Less and less on the mic. Les Williams from AWS. I think that question about the financials and everything was the quintessential part of the corporate part of NANOG, which we've spent about an hour talking about, and you all have spoken as to how you can fix NANOG's finances and all that stuff. We spoke a little bit about new membership and everything. But one thing that I am really keen on is, as leaders, what is your personal connection to the broader NANOG community? Not from what you bring in terms of managing and operating NANOG, but how informed you are as leaders. Leaders need to keep their ears to the ground to be able to meet with us at the socials and be able to talk to us. So there's 2 parts to that. And I think I've had the opportunity of working with Liz and Steve quite closely in the program committee and in other areas. So I know, and Steve, I love your story about how you approach new members. that is a personal anecdote that resonated with me, that you're doing the effort to meet NANOGers, both new and existing, to listen to them, to see what matters. And that is something that you can take to implement changes or programs at the board that would resonate both for our present community and extending outward. Steve Feldman, as well as Matt, I would love to hear from you personal stories of instances wherein you've mentored folks that has been transformational for their participation at NANOG, or just personal stories that of your style in terms of how ingrained you are with the broader NANOG group beyond just the board. And John mentioned something about elitism when he got here, BGP. How have you worked to break that so that people don't feel that at a personal level? And Elizabeth, Steve, feel free to weigh in, but given the shortness of time, I would like to direct my question to you, Steve and Matt. Thank you.
I can start, I guess. So I guess I'm your classic introvert. It takes a lot for me to go out and just pound the flesh and meet people. I mean, I do try. I should do a better job of it. I will say though that in smaller settings like the program committee, I think is a great example. I have found a few opportunities where I could take somebody who showed promise and under my wing a bit and help guide them into roles they might not have thought of otherwise, or into leadership roles that they ended up doing and thriving in. It's developing those one-on-one connections and really helping them see what the goal of the organization is and what they can do to help go in that direction. In general, I do like talking to everyone and hearing what you have to say. So please do approach me, even if I'm just standing there looking lost. I do want to hear what you have to say and take it back.
All right, thank you. Did you want to have a quick rejoinder as well? Or? Yes.
Yeah, no.
I think he directed it to Liz. So.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought I was exempt.
Oh, were you excited?
I directed it to Matt and to Steve.
Right.
Oh, Matt and Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No biggie.
he didn't.
Yeah, so if you look at my support statements, there's a member from 2022 that joined. I would definitely read his review because I think that goes to exactly what you're talking about. You know, for me, examples that come up are interactions early in your career. So I went to an event that was sort of a maker fair at a old missile silo, and we built a temporary network there. And one of the stories that just really follows me is helping set that network up and work with a teenager. You know, we're crimping cables or running stuff and saying, hey, there's this monitoring thing, there's this thing, SNMP, and their father happened to be in networking, and this person had no interest in networking. And so we sat them down, and this is going to date me, but we set up MRTG, we set up a Linux, infrastructure, et cetera. And I saw that career, early stage career blossom. And so for me, that was really impactful. And I think it's stories like that where you can interact with folks, again, outside of the in-person NANOG meeting. Like once you're here, there are some challenges, but that funnel is really important. And so seeing that person a few years later get into network engineering and reach out and say, hey, it was because of that interaction that I decided to get into networking. And I think a lot of us had that, particularly those of us, in the late 90s and early 2000s. There was not an internet industry. And so those type of engagements, I think, have been really personal. And I've had a bunch of those, but we're getting close on time and still have 2 more people. So.
All right, thank you. RS.
So this is Rob Seastrom. I'm on the Aaron Board of Trustees. I work for Capital One. I have a very tiny ISP of my own, and I think I can claim internet old timer at this point. Yeah. So I have not been to any WISPA events I'd like to go. I suspect, though, that I have seen the same people, a different generation, at ISPCon, which was a Boardwatch magazine thing in the 1990s. I want to do a quick poll here, show of hands. You can put your hand up if you were an officer of the corporation or the owner of the corporation or consultant or looking for work. Who here has self-financed coming to NANOG at least 5 times? Everybody else, you're in sales. You are selling your boss on the value of coming to NANOG. If you want the people who are running the wireless ISPs, the people who are coming are also the CEO, are also the CTO, because it's a 2 or 3 person shop. You don't have the outsourced sales for that you have in this room here, going and convincing their boss, hey, you should spend money to send me to NANOG. And I'll point out that WISPA costs about half as much for about the same length of time. I'm not saying to change your prices. I'm saying to sell them on the value proposition, and you have to reach out to them directly to do it. And I would like to invite any or all of you to riff on that concept of reaching out directly to the organizational and demographic folks that we want and to be joining us at NANOG meetings and sell them on the value proposition. Thank you.
All right, we've got just about 90 seconds left, so if you've got some, I don't know if I have time for a response up here.
You don't need to do it to the group here, just think about it.
I had a question.
Go for it.
Let's do-
Future.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Future. The question that I have is, how would you ensure financial stability while fostering an inclusive environment where all voices, especially underrepresented, and in this community that would be categorized by gender, the younger age groups, that would be categorized by women, that would also be categorized by LGBTQ+, that would also be categorized by global majority or minority. Underrepresented people are valued.
It's a lot. 40 seconds. That's 10 seconds each. Go.
I think that providing the basis by which everybody can come and have something here that they can get value out of and convince other people to send them because there is value here, I think that's the best way we can serve at least the maybe younger community.
I think there are 2 basic prongs to it. One is outreach to make sure people who've never heard of us or hadn't thought about it realize that they will feel welcome if they come here. And then the second part is to make sure that they actually do feel welcome when they come here, which means having programs aimed at them that help them navigate our community.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I agree with what everyone else has said. Look at my candidate statement. Again, education, outreach, and being welcoming to other communities. Some of them you mentioned, I do feel part of those communities.
So I am huge level of empathy for LGBTQ+ and minorities in my dealings in my personal life and my religious life as well, and that continues on into here. I don't think you have to have special programs. It's more of the fact that they feel comfortable and that they feel accepted. And so it's a general rule of how do you deal with that part of the community so that they don't feel excluded, nor do they feel like they're an special example. And so that's the key thing with regard to how to manage that relationship.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you to our board candidates here for being with us and answering all the questions we have. It is after 3:30, so voting should be open. Go online, log in, and click on the voting link. And thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to John.
Thank you. That was a great panel discussion with our candidates. I really appreciate everybody's time and thought and good questions and answers.